As I've chronicled a lot of my generation and younger cats, something that I've been struck by, unfortunately not that often, is guys that step to the forefront with their own individual sound at such a young age. And in some ways, a lot of the guys that I've interviewed before, um, my dear soul uncle Pat Martino and John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola and George Benson. I mean, so many of these guys were basically putting the stylus on the record and listening to it. There weren't a lot of jazz schools. You were on the bandstand, you were playing R&B, you were on these circuits, and ultimately, because of the lack of amplification and the ability for you to really have to listen to the rest of the collective, you really did develop your own sound. Moving into the modern day, that seems to be harder to do, and there's more of a homogenization of sound. And my guest is somebody who's just broken through that into the intergalactic, and it's not something that he has really forced or sort of try to dictate or manage. It just seems, at least from the content that I've been able to digest, is that it really is just coming through him from the universe. And I think he recognizes that when he gets out of his own way, which is not easy to do all the time, that he can be a conduit for information coming through him and, in fact, help raise the collective consciousness of the entire concert hall, venue, hockey rink, stadium, whatever he's playing at. I look forward to the day when this radio host gets a chance to ride the rail of one of his shows, and we can help. I can help raise the collective consciousness with him, so that we can all go into the intergalactic and continue to be inspired as human animals on this planet. Jaden Lehman, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Man, thank you so much for having me on. It's really an honor, and that was the beautiful words. Thank you so much. You just said so much of what I hope comes across. So that's really meaningful. Thank you.
Well, it's true. And actually, I just wanted to start there because what I've after 13 years, I mean, I would write out in the past a long monologue, but that was completely off the top of my head. I mean, it was totally unscripted and it was completely improvised. And I kind of wanted you to talk about your evolution as it relates to just really playing off the cuff, recognizing that the rudiments are embedded, that the vocabulary will continue to grow, but a lot of the vocabulary in certain genres of music are embedded, and how you have been able to get out of your thinking mind into the spirit mind and play off the cuff.
Yeah, that's I think something that you said in that intro that comes to mind immediately that has been really helpful just throughout my journey. Something that this bass player Bubba Newton brought up to me, who plays with a Dead cover band, Crazy Fingers in South Florida. He's a huge fan of Steve Kimock, and so am I. He's been so inspiring to me in so many
I
ways. And he
love the
says
man. Yeah, great guy, man.
Kimock never forces anything, and I think that's just such a key part of it, is not forcing it, because I don't know. Whenever I notice that my thinking brain gets involved when I'm playing and tries to steer something in any certain direction, um, then the flow gets interrupted. And whenever I'm feeling out of my mind and really just in it, and I notice, oh man, it's all happening, then that's as soon as you get taken out of it, you know.
I know, I
Um,
know, I know, I know, I know.
but yeah, even in my improvisations recently, like I have a little trio that I've been playing with out here in LA. I'm a student at USC, and some people that I met out here, we've been
Sure.
playing, and most of the time when we improvise, we just start out with space, and maybe we won't even start playing time for 5 minutes, or 10 minutes even. Um, and I think just giving yourself that freedom to, or at least in my experience, giving myself that freedom to just let things happen when they want to, and not being in any rush. And sometimes, when we sit down to improvise, something comes to me and I immediately start playing something and it's in time, and it has a groove and everything, and it's great. And that just came naturally. And but other times it takes longer, and it doesn't happen every time. And I think that's all part of it.
It is.
Just
No, this is really
allowing it and
important.
not forcing anything, I think, is just so huge and such a lesson that I'm relearning every single time I pick up the guitar.
I don't think it's easy. I want you to talk about it from, I mean, I'm 46. I think you're probably, I mean, maybe you're 20. How old are you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm 20.
Okay, so you're 20 years old. I mean, like, I'm not saying it's, I think, I subscribe to, yoga is a very, a fanciful word, and many people consider it, sort of in this, you're sort of in this, Indian style position, sedentary, meditative, trying to find this meditative space of peacefulness. And yet, I completely subscribe to what they call nada yoga or sound yoga, which is just like I get to a point where there's this urgency, tribal urgency, but yet, like you said, I'm completely out of my thinking mind and completely in the flow of whatever's happening on the bandstand as a patron. And the reason I ask you is at 20 years old, I grew up for at least 20 years in an analog world, and I really had to use my own imagination. I had to use my own fantasy. And I had to, and that comes with visions after that. You start getting visions and you start sort of becoming inspired. And your generation, my older daughter's 19, and she is brilliant too, but you guys have had this interface consistently distracting you guys. And on top of that, this idea that there's a jazz program in every single school in this country. And I don't really know how you can codify a language like blues or jazz. And so everything has become very intellectual. So that's a long-winded way of asking you, how have you learned to tune out the noise of all your peers and all the people that are completely intellectualizing a music that, for the most part, is based on feel and soul?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I couldn't imagine being your age. I wouldn't know any better. But like it seems to be like I don't know how, you're just gifted, but like it seems to be this like calisthenic exercise, like riffology. Look at me. And I think that has a lot to do with just the amount of visual material and the intellectualization of the music. And yet when I hear you, I don't feel like you're holding anything against anybody else, but I feel like you have been able to really tune out that noise. And maybe you're just really having a ball in your own world, but I have to believe it can get a little bit cluttered sometimes, you know?
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for saying that. Like, it really means a lot that's what is coming across.
It
Because
is.
that's absolutely what the intention is, and what I hope for. So thank you. One thing that for me, I've realized recently, actually, how much inspiration I take from this part of my life, over into my music. But getting outside in nature, has been so inspiring in so many ways for me, and just in separating myself from like the way that things are currently, in the music
Absolutely.
industry. And
Absolutely.
like I've always been, my acoustic guitar has several cracks in it because I take it hiking with me and go to the beach with it, and a lot of my writing gets done out, just somewhere remote away from everybody else, and just super, just, I feel like nature is one of the things that's never going to be tainted by whatever society's doing in the moment. Like TikTok doesn't exist out in the beach. Like, and
It's
like
funny. It's funny you said it because, like, I completely with you, except the fact that, I mean, whether, just you can tell. I mean, I live in Tucson and I'm looking at my computer right now and we're at a near record temperature for, it shouldn't be 97 degrees in October. So man is fucking up nature. But in the real time, you're right. You can get
you're right.
away. You can get out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's very important not to ignore. I'm an environmental studies minor at
No,
SC,
I
and
dig. I'm just saying,
I'm
but
yeah.
it's cool that you can go Huntington Beach or, go up in the hills or go to Oteil or whatever, lose reception. There's no TikTok. You just got the broken acoustic. You know, you got the cracked acoustic.
Yeah, man. And one another thing that I do feel really lucky about is just a lot of the people that I've been lucky enough to be in rooms with are so in tune with their own personal thing that they have going on, and seeing people who have already committed to it and leaned into it so hard and it works. It's so inspiring, and it shows you like, the one thing that you have. This is something that Oteil Burbridge, who's been I cannot say enough positive things about him. He's such an amazing person. But
I love, yeah, the gray cat, man.
he
Such a
he
great cat.
he's always told me, like, the one thing that you have that other people don't have is yourself. Like, which is, some people try to practice themselves out of their playing. Um,
Wow, that's profound state. Wait, okay, so wait, he's so and so what? Continue. What is you can't? How do you practice yourself out of your own playing?
um, I think it comes from, you hear people do something and you know that that works, so you try to just emulate. And I think that transcription and learning other people's music is how you get the language in.
Right.
But when it comes time to actually express yourself, not thinking about what did they do, or what is an audience expecting, or what do I know works. It's like, okay, what is all that? How does all that feel in my heart, and how can I, reflect it out and express it in a way that just feels authentic to myself. Um, yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
I
know.
think that's and so going back to this idea of like clutter. I mean, first of all, one thing I was like, yesterday I was like, I was really fired up to interview you, and I mean, and truth be told, I mean, the idea that I'm like familiar with the discographies of all the cats that I've interviewed, that would just not be true. I mean, a lot of times I go in just based on man to man, man to woman, man to man, just and let's just have a free flowing conversation. But I was like, I really want to dig into this, and the first thing that popped up for me was, I don't know, you got to listen to my interviews with Norm Harris, because we
Oh,
did,
no way,
yeah,
man.
we did two. He, because he knew Johnny Guitar Watson very well, and he knew Little Beaver very well. Those are two class. If you don't know either of those cats' guitars playing, you got to get hip to them. So we did these two podcasts, and then your video comes up, and you were like, I mean, this was like 7 years ago, and
Yeah,
he was like, being an intro, and then you ripped off like this like totally flowing blues. It wasn't like flashy. It was just like it was sick, and like, like your family with people were there like cheering you on, and I mean, you had a cheering. You didn't even need the cheering section. It was just very much like that was you. And I just wonder, has there ever really been a time when you had to, um, I don't know. I mean, it just to be yourself, whatever Oteil said. I mean, the idea, the only thing that you have that nobody else has is yourself. And I just wonder, was there a time when you were, where it just seemed you were being distracted and comping something, or trying to do something like somebody else because it worked? Or have you always been somebody that's just like, hey, you know what? I'm going to cast my fate to the wind. I'm going to have a ball, and I'm just going to be me.
Um, I feel like in the last few years I've really leaned into it much more. It's always been lingering, and I think I've always deep down known that that's the way. And I think maybe even to an extent, I had to not see it so clearly to get to this point. And even still, it's every day you just have to continually work there. But you know, one
Like, do
thing
do
that's
you
in
remember that? Do you remember that Norm Harris? I mean, do you remember like when you finished that solo? That's more to the idea that I guess that I want to talk to you about
Sure.
is
Yeah.
like the idea, the Socratic. I remember Terry Haggerty from the Sons of Champlin coming off the stage, uh, and if you don't know that band, I'll hip you to that. That is the sickest psychedelic band. They were the best musicians out of the Bay Area, against all those other bands that came out of it. But Hags was the first guy to be running bebop lines through rock music, and
Mm.
And he was doing a lot of acid. I mean, he'd come off the stage, people would say, "How did you do that?" And he goes, "I have no idea." And it just
Hmm.
felt like when I saw you take that solo at 13 years old, and if somebody went up to you and said, "How did you do that?" I feel like you would have said, "I have no idea." So have you adopted that Socratic method of you must know what you don't know?
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I think so. That's one of those things that yeah, you look back on and it's just, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but all I know is that Norm is such a gracious person, and that was so sweet of him to give me that, platform when I never would have even thought that that would have happened going in there. And another one of those things that's just sort of you can't ever plan for. Like I think in that video I wasn't using a pick probably. And that was, sometimes I played with a pick, sometimes I didn't. Um I was just trying out guitars and I didn't have a pick with me, so I wasn't playing with one at that time. And then, hey, you want to film a video? Cool. And then I didn't have a pick, so I think that kind of forced me to do more of my own thing too. Um,
Wow.
it just so happened to work out that way that I didn't think to ask for one, or just felt comfortable enough. Um,
It literally felt like I could have been in a store window in Chicago in like 69. Like that's the thing that's unquantifiable about music is that, you know, I mean, we all have a soul and everyone's soul is deep. How deep is it? But like that was just about as greasy a soul. I've never seen someone rip that off and do it so authentically. It was really, and then I checked out some other, I mean, it's just can you talk about how you've learned to going back to that Socratic thing because everybody has an ego, what I mean? And how you've just sort of learned to say, I mean, I'm only partly responsible for what's coming through me. Like I am merely a vehicle for this information because ultimately that, like I said in my intro, when you get out of your own way, that's ultimately how the magic really happens.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think yeah, releasing your ownership of what your art is, I think is really liberating, and like once you realize it, it allows you to lean into it more. Um, um, yeah, one thing that over the years, I guess I've realized too is like a lot of that happens, especially in the improvisational like jam band music. Is the direction of my solo is almost more influenced by what the rest of the band is doing than what I want to happen. Like
Yes, yes.
I'll play one note and then the bass player will play something in response, and then I hear that, and then that influences where I go, and then it's just like it really isn't about yourself. And when you try to force something to happen in some way, then the audience feels it, the band feels it, and it just isn't that magic thing that everybody's looking for when they step into the musical space and are, like everybody knows that the potential for that magic is there. And I think that if you're trying to force it anyway, then you're forcing it in a direction that isn't natural, and it's probably not gonna, you're getting in the way of whatever that thing is that we can't really put our finger on. um and yeah, definitely just recognizing the role of all the other musicians that you're playing with in facilitating that, I think is huge.
Generally speaking, if you're listening and reacting to sound, I mean, you're going to be here now. You're going to be in the moment, and it's not like you're going to be trying to make a statement, um, like where it's about me, me, me. I mean, you're. Do you feel like? Can you talk a little bit about? Uh, I mean, he left the planet a few years ago, but he was a dear soul brother. Is Ndugu Chancellor. He's an amazing drummer who taught at USC, but I mean, he was
Hmm.
and Michael Jackson's drummer, played incredible jazz with, uh, Thelonious and a lot of amazing fusion. And just the dude was a beast, played with Santana. And he's like, USC is cool. He's like, there's a lot of cats, international cats that are coming. He's like, people that, that they're paying to come, and if they unless they get a scholarship. But, he's like, I don't see the one thing I don't see the cats from the academy, playing with the guys that have rubber bands around their horns, that the blues cats or the street scholars. It's
Hmm.
sort of like this inside baseball game. It's an inside joke for musicians, and as opposed to, I mean, just look at all the cats, at least in jazz, that didn't have any academic, Dolphy, Bird, Max Roach, Train, those guys were all street scholars. And I wonder, since you've been out there, because I know you're marinating in Florida for most of your life. I mean,
Hmm.
um, how have you tried to access the street scholars? To me, it's essential because you're going to get a whole different kind of accent on the language of music by playing with those cats as opposed to just being caught up with the cats that are in the academy.
Definitely, yeah. That's one thing that I feel like I wish that I had a better grasp on that because a lot of it for me, I just feel like, man, how am I so lucky to have had the opportunities to play with people like that, who you're describing. And you're right, it is a very different thing. Y- I wish I had more to say on how I actually would approach that, but
Can I tell you something? Just
yeah.
because we've connected, I mean, I'm going to not that there's nothing. So I'm going to first of all, I'm going to connect you with some of the top level street cats in the Los Angeles area, if you don't mind, and then you can take it from there.
Oh,
Because
that's so sweet, man.
because I mean, dude,
Really.
honestly, these guys are like, I mean, they've saved me, and these are the most raw dudes. Like, sure, they've had some lessons here and there, but I mean, this is just they're just burning, and no matter what, it's just a good way to connect with that regional. Because one of the questions I always ask people is where do you need to grow the most and push yourself out of your comfort zone. So I guess we've already identified that, but I'm going to help you with that because at the end of the day, I mean, where are you at in terms of, um, you know, I feel like Mingus or Taj Mahal. I mean, so many of these guys, so many geniuses died broke, but most importantly, most people were telling their own life story, and I feel like
Hmm.
even from my generation and younger, it's hard to develop a life story when you kind of grow up in suburbia, middle class life, kind of mundane. And I just wonder about if you can talk about some adversity you faced in your life and that how you've incorporated that and into your storytelling when you play.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, music has always been a huge I mean, the thing that I use to process my pain more than anything else. For sure. I think it's almost funny. Sometimes I look back at all the songs I've written and I can pinpoint, oh, that happened right after this happened, or I wrote that right after this. But one thing last I guess this is a little over a year ago now, just one thing that comes to mind recently that happened that very immediately translated into my music was I was running across the street in downtown, and just the way that the cars, a bunch of cars were backed up at a red light, didn't look like there was a lane beyond them. So I just ran across the street. Turns out there was a lane of cars I didn't see, and I got hit. And
Oh,
somehow walked literally, I rolled across the street and stood up and was completely fine. Like
dude, this is beyond the
miracle,
pale. This is blowing.
miracle.
Was
Yeah,
this in was this in Cali or Florida?
in Cali, yeah.
I mean, were they like you just were they going slowly or was it like
Like probably like 25, 30,
oh
not
my
super fast, but fast enough that and I got like a bruise on my side and that was it.
yeah, it
And
should knock
scraped
you off your
elbows.
feet, but I mean you just rolled and oh my God.
Yeah, man, and I got back to my little dorm room that night and spent 7 hours in front of a computer writing and recording a demo for a song. Um, and a lot of the time it just comes, you just sit down and it's the thing that gets you out of your mind and just I don't know. Nothing maybe surfing. Other than that, nothing seems to get me out of my head like just sitting down and improvising and letting stuff like you've said in all of the interviews I've listened to of yours, just letting it come through. Um, because I think something about the way that music can allow you to step outside of yourself really can be so therapeutic because all those things are part of your ego, that stuff that happens to you. Like, it's all on this level, but I really feel like that creative force that comes through is from somewhere else that can really liberate you from that stuff, you know?
Talking to Jaden Lehman here on the Jake Feinberg show, having a ball. I mean, can you talk about the regional? It's a little bit of an abstract question, but I think you can dig into it. It just, what are the rhythms, the regional rhythms when you go out into nature, or because you lived on both coasts?
Hmm.
Is there a discern? I mean, I just did an interview with Reese Winans, who now he plays with Joe Bonamassa, but you go back to the late '60s, he was with Barry Oakley in a band called Second Coming. Didn't make it into the Almonds, but the dude's a ridiculous player. And at the time, Jim Morrison was born in Clearwater. Tom Petty was there. The Almonds were down there. Skinnerd was down there. I mean, it was the most absurd regional music scene on the East Coast of Florida, anyway. And then now you're out in Southern California. I just wonder if there's a different regional rhythm from from your Florida days to what you perceive now. I mean, I'm from New York. I will never live in the East Coast again. I have so many good friends. I love going back to hang, but the West Coast, I mean, especially the cats that I've connected with that live in Southern California, I mean, there's just a different rhythm going on out there. Have you noticed that there's a little bit of a different frequency between Florida and Los Angeles?
I definitely think so. Well, if we're talking like musically, I feel like
Yeah,
maybe to an extent, some of that, at least among younger people, has been homogenized because everybody can listen to the same things with
absolutely. Nailed it.
technology.
You nailed it.
But
Yeah.
um, but I don't know. One thing that I've noticed, this just might be where I'm at, in my journey. So, this is through my eyes. But um, a lot of the music that I was playing over in Florida was very much revolved around when we're improvising, it's like one voice is taking the lead and everybody else is rallying in support. Um, you know what I mean? Like the dead thing, at least when you're still playing over the song form, it's like this instrument is taking the lead and everybody else can contribute to the conversation, but it's all about supporting this one voice.
Dig.
Um,
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like out here, a lot of the music that I've been making, at least all like the improvised stuff, has been much more group improvisation, and everybody is contributing equally to the conversation. And I feel like maybe some of the influences are different too. Like a lot of the people that I've been playing with out here are big into like the old session cat scene. Like my like one of my closest friends, Max, who's a drummer. It's like Gadsden and Jim Gordon and Keltner and all those people. And I feel like there's a lot more of that out here.
Dude, you let your friend know because I mean, both Gadsden and Keltner are dear friends of mine. So if he wants to connect with those guys, you let me know. I
That
mean,
is
I'm
so
I mean,
sweet,
I'm good. I
man.
mean, they are the most insane cats. I mean, and first of all, I mean, Jim Keltner has recorded before he made the move into hardcore studio work. I mean, he was a jazzer. He and Albert Stinson were on the bandstand in the late '60s, trying to be Philly Joe and Jimmy Garrison or Paul Chambers. And there's some amazing jazz recordings of Keltner. Gadsden was on the road with Hank Ballard, and we were playing R&B and soul, but Ballard would let the band have the first set, and they were playing like, I mean, I'm not going to say it was like Sun Ra stuff, but I mean, they were just, the bottom line was when Gadsden came off the road and got in with Charles Wright and the 103rd Street Rhythm Band, he couldn't play that music. I mean, it was so simple, but he was so angular with his drumming at that point that he had to relearn how to play simply. And to this day, those guys, well, they helped me find my voice, but they just also like they're better human beings than they are musicians. So, I mean, I just feel like, part of my job is to also keep the lineage together. The thing I wanted to ask you about the sound of what you're doing now with the cats you play with. Do you think like, especially when you talked earlier about going into sort of a jam, there's not necessarily a time signature, it's just kind of free. I mean, do you feel like as opposed to a lead player dictate, everybody following that player, the Florida vibe, that you're, to me, the most amazing thing in music is when the entire band reaches one sound collectively. Is
Mm.
that kind of like not a goal, but does that sort of come together where you guys are all on the same frequency in a within the context of the group? It basically becomes one sound.
Totally. Yeah. We've been thinking a lot about this metaphor, just like building a musical world with like like that,
Right.
like you just step into this thing and it's like, oh wow, okay, we're in this place now, and it has such a distinct character. Um, I don't know, thinking about it in that way, I feel like you really do reach a place where it seems like everybody's on the same page because the intention is to take it into the same like space, even though not physical, but it almost you can visually see it sometimes, maybe even. Um, and also, I don't know. I think it just comes down to you just trying to be the best listener that you can too, because in a conversation musically, like with with the right players, it really just feels like you're saying something and then they're saying something, and no matter what you say, it's just call and response, and it's gonna get there. Um, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think that you have to have somewhere where it just doesn't go
It's
to a
never,
place
it's
that you
never, I
want it
mean,
to.
what would be the fun if it always got to this point, you know?
Yeah,
You know?
totally.
Yeah. Have you,
You
yeah.
need the time. Yeah, it needs to not work sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, were you, I remember talking to a great piano player local here in Tucson, he teaches at the university, Angelo Versace, and he grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and him and his trio, they would, I mean, in devotion like style, every Thursday they would go into Pittsburgh to this place called the Crawford Grill, and there was a jam session there, and it was run by Roger Humphrey, who was the drummer on Horace Silver's song for my father,
Mm.
and really a legendary, drummer. And they were in high school, and they were getting off on what they were doing, and some nights they'd show up at the jam session, and Roger would say, "All right, good enough, keep going," and then there'd be other nights where he'd be like, "That wasn't good." And that drive home was lonely for them. That 45-minute drive home, it was just like, because they knew where they stood. They knew it's the same thing with Jackie Byard. He was teaching at Berkeley. Mark Levine, a great piano trombone player, rest in peace, would walk in. He wasn't even going to Berkeley at the time, but he would walk in, and Jackie would sit down even though he's a piano player, sit down at the drums, and he'd say, "Let's play Cherokee in all 12 keys."
Mm.
And Mark would get to like G or what, some key, and he'd fall apart, and Jackie would just be like, "All right, well, now you know what you need to work on, and I'll see you next week." It was a 10-minute lesson. Was there something in your early life, especially within the band context, where you felt like it wasn't like everybody got the trophy, everyone was a winner, like somebody was there to sort of let you know, or the band know, um, guys, that's just not cutting it. You knew that whatever you were getting, you were earning.
Mm. You know,
You can say no.
Well, I did have one of my first guitar teachers who I studied with for several years, who I credit so much of my growth to him. This wasn't necessarily in a group setting, but in our private lessons every week he would give me a lot to work on,
Right.
and
Right.
I feel really grateful that I was able to study with him at a time when, like in middle school, I didn't really have much else to do other than practice what he was giving me. But I definitely knew that if I didn't come in the next week playing what he asked of me, then I was gonna feel it. But with that with that said, now I think a lot of it just comes from internal pressure, um, just from myself. Like for example, this is something that I'm working on right now that I am really like at the beginning stages of is slide guitar playing, um, because I've been so scared of it for so long because I feel like my voice is I'm just very connected with I feel very connected to the guitar in the ways that I've played before. Um,
Sure.
and I feel like I can really express myself with it, but then I put on a slide and suddenly I'm not as comfortable and therefore it feels like I can't express myself. So what's the point? Um, but I've realized that, like the last few months that no, if you work on something, it will get there. It just takes hours and it's a little humbling to go back and be really bad at something again. But
No, yeah, you know what? It's so hard to do, and yet so gratifying when
mhm.
because that really is, because you never even, Jaden, it's just like, and it's really hard um, to get complacent. But the minute you stop fighting or pushing yourself, your art will become mediocre.
Mhm.
And that's something to always, so the idea there is like, don't settle for anything and keep growing. So, I mean, and now your playing is sort of at least better than it was, at least slide wise.
Yeah, totally. And another thing that I've been doing, just to get out of old habits and just sort of try to discover new sounds is with that trio that I was talking about with my buddy Max. I've been playing almost only in this open tuning that I made up
Oh, beautiful. I
that
love this,
I
dude. You're nailing it,
yeah,
dude.
it's like, just it's basically a big like C power chord that I just capo up wherever I need to. Just it's a CG is the whole tuning. Um and that's not something that I think other people play in, so it really just forced me to develop my own vocabulary with it. And simply by tuning the guitar to something that other people don't play in, I feel like it forces you to figure out your own voice with it and not really listen to what other people are doing. And that's another thing where I had to relearn. Like I just went in the other day and I'm like relearning all like the seventh and ninth and all the chord shapes and these like modal chord shapes that I play on standard tuning that I'm now trying to map out on this tuning. And it's very humbling to go back and you do need to work. So it's good to continue doing that.
You know, I uh I have to ask you because this just shot into my. I mean, when I first saw you, when you first came on my radar, I noticed that like Oteil was a big fan. Obviously, you guys played live, and
Mhm.
um, he was on your record, and I'm just like, so, uh, immediately the two cats and I haven't interviewed either of them yet, but that's why I feel so honored to interview you is Julian Lage and Billy Strings. Those
Yeah.
those two cats, like they're a little bit farther along, and I'm sure if I really pushed hard, I mean, like because when I was just pursuing as a journalist like crazy 10 years ago, I could get to them. But it's sort of whatever comes organically now is what it's about. And I sort of feel like you're heading in a direction where, like, in a few years, you're going to be cutting your own path. And I really wanted to ask you, and it's a hypothetical, but, you know, uh, like, are you somebody at this point in your life, if somebody came along and said, "Hey, we're going to offer you a lot of money, but we're going to strip you a lot of with not they're not going to say this directly, but they're basically what you would realize is that you're getting a lot of dough, you're taking a band on the road, uh, and yet you've lost a lot of creative freedom because they want you to play a formula trip show in order to make the bottom line. And I just wonder about your concept of like pursuing the art that you want to pursue as opposed to conforming to the what I call music racket. I don't know what
Yeah.
I mean, I see Billy like Billy blew me away. I saw him at a big arena, but it was like, and it was amazing. And I know Royal Massad, his bass player. I mean, like that they're badass, but like, and it was cool. And I hope they're happy. But I just wonder with you if like you bounced off a car, rolled to the sidewalk, somebody was like, "Hey, Jaden, we're going to offer you some dough because you got the talent, you got the entertainment value, you got the bandstand leadership, but you know, we're going to would you take that if you lost a lot of creative control of your own art?"
That's a good question. I think for me, I this my personal stuff is so sacred to me that I wouldn't ever want to sacrifice any of my choices when it's my art and it's my name on it to make it more accessible for anybody. But another thing that I've learned since moving to LA in playing with other artists and being support for them, like I play with a ton of just like pop music artists out here too. And it's a completely different hat and one that I've had to learn to love and still find a unique voice as a pop guitar player. Um, I think that those experiences where you have to conform to something can teach you a lot and still inform what it is that you do when it's just completely up to you.
Can you give an
Um,
example? Can you give an example? I'm very interested in
yeah, I mean, like, just like for example, at Paul Jackson Jr. works at USC, and I'm studying with him right now,
it.
and I'm working on all these single note rhythm guitar parts from old like 80s, 90s pop tunes with him,
Right.
and playing with singer-songwriters and pop artists who are at USC in the music program and playing out and stuff. That forces me into a support the vocal and lock in, be super in the pocket, and play something repetitive that sits in the groove. And I don't know, even that stuff kind of carries over when I'm doing a 30-minute free improvisation with somebody. I'm
That's
happy to
awesome.
sit for 5 minutes and play the exact same thing on repeat, you know?
I did.
Um, I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of like the lines aren't maybe as I don't know, as distinct as like as it might seem, I guess, in my head. I don't know.
Well,
Does that
all
make
I know is,
sense?
yeah. No, I mean, it's. I mean, you're also like, you're like you, you just started on the path. I mean, it's like I just, it just what makes me a little disheartened today, and Kraz, another guy you played with, Eric Kraz now,
Hmm.
and I know, Oteil and those guys. I mean, they're putting their best foot forward, but and because of their names, they're doing okay. But what really bums me out about modern day touring circuits is just the bands that are making good dough are playing the same show every night. And I recognize that a lot of fans, they pay a lot of money and they want to hear exactly what's on the record, but that is completely antithetical to any of the impresarios or promoters from back when it was like, hey, you know what? We're going to put Malo, the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and the Grateful Dead on the same bill, or Jefferson playing, Santana and, you know, Mahavishnu Orchestra. It was like, it was about saying to people, hey, you may not know these cats, but you need to dig this kind of stuff. And I just, the bean counters have gotten so involved in the live music circuit that if you're really trying to play original, like you said, sacred music, then even cats that have been on the road for 10 years, they're still running out of a Sprinter van, and they're still their own roadies. And the only way they make any dough is on the merch table. And so I could just will continue my show until sacred music for not just you, but for legions of other musicians is commodified. Because I just do not, I cannot handle Formula Trip concerts. I really can't. I mean, it's really difficult for me at this point in my life.
I hear you, man. Yeah, honestly,
I mean,
it's
you
been
don't even have
something
to
that I've
respond to that.
had
It's just
to.
riffing on me, you know?
No, I'm
Yeah.
having to face that right now because yeah, like I'm 20 and I'm in school and I don't have a thing going yet fully, you know. So
Oh,
it's
that's
like,
gonna that's gonna this is a big demarcation point, dude. I'm not saying it's gonna happen overnight. I'm just saying you're gonna have the opportunity now to connect with the legendary like my generation cats who are like, but there isn't, but that's the point, man. There should be a bigger scene, man, you know? And that's the thing that bums me out is that um it, it just like everybody should have this. I mean, that's what Kenny Burrell said at UCLA. He's like, you know, I mean, he grew up with Donald Byrd and Elvin and all those cats, and they were
mhm.
transcribing off the records, and they were going to these movie theaters and or Monday night jam sessions. Obviously, things were a little bit different. You get in underage, and there was no Mothers Against Drunk Driving and stuff. But he's like, now the jam sessions are in the student union, and it's like that's just students playing with other students. And so, anyway, I'm just on my soapbox right now. But I'm just saying, my hope is that my hope now that you're out in that neck of the woods that a couple of nice connections will be made to get you out of the ivory tower, so to speak.
Thank you, man. I mean, it means a lot too. Like the fact that there are people like you and many others, and just who are still looking for that thing that we're looking for.
That's it,
It
man.
means
That's
that
all
there's
there
hope.
is. Yeah.
Like it's still out there. It's just maybe harder to find than because it's not. The social media algorithms might not like it so much, but it is still out there.
Dude, you're nailing it, bro. But that's the point is that it has nothing to do, like, that's the thing. It's like you, it is harder to find. And when but it's even it's even nastier than it's ever been. So if you can
Mm,
just find it, then you're in it. And at that point, it has nothing to do with likes or comments or any bullshit like that. Like the cats will know if it's the real shit. The problem is a lot of people, my daughters included, that's why it's so great to talk to somebody your age. They've been raised on quantized, mechanical
mhm.
music for so long that I worry a lot about the younger generations even knowing what authentic music is. It's really scary to me.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Try quantizing Gadsden and see what it does to the groove. Like,
Dude, it's forget about
like, but one thing that I find really beautiful, which like I don't think that I get there all the time, and I don't even want to say the majority of the time. And but like when it gets there, people in the audience who might have never even like seen a show where a lot of it's improvised before, it still resonates somehow. Like
it.
just it's true. So
Right.
people who are open to it will feel it. Like I've been playing shows in my backyard, and we'll have 20 people come or something, and if it gets there, those 20 people
Dude,
like
that
I've had
sounds
people say like, man, like wow, like thank you. I've never like that's um and I don't think that the truth of it is going away, even if it just becomes harder to see. Like it's always going to be as impactful.
Actually, and the cats that are shining, their aura is shining. They stand out more. And luckily, I'm not a musician because I have the easy job just as as a journalist. But it's like to be able to detect something that is authentic and real. But it's the ability to feel really. And Jade, I have to ask you um, a couple questions. Are you going to be in town on the weekend of November 1st and 2nd?
Um, Let me check right now.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, okay. So the first, I'm booked the first, but the second I'm gonna be around.
Well, what's going on the first?
I'm playing at a Halloween thing in my backyard.
Oh, first of all, I'm coming to that. Okay. Second of all,
Oh man, oh that's so
so on
sweet.
Saturday night though, I want you to write this down because this is
Yeah.
really important. I'm promoting a show, a band called House Band, and these are the cats you need to meet. I'm doing it at Records Roadhouse. I don't know if you've been there before.
Yeah, yeah, I was there last month. I've been keeping up with the house band on Instagram actually since you've been posting about them. They
Okay, so
seem
I'm just saying
killer,
that
dude.
is when we're gonna. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna save the text, but 6 to 9, please come, dude, because that will be the voltage and connection into those guys are the sweetest cats. They're the nastiest musicians, and there'll be a ton of other people there too. So, but I'm gonna come to that Halloween part. My plan is to be in LA on Friday, and I was looking for something to do, so I'm definitely coming to that party.
Oh man, that's so sweet and thank you. That
No,
show just
we're
went in
going
my
to the heavens
calendar.
that night, dude. We're going to the heavens then.
Yeah, man, hell yeah. But yeah,
I,
no, that's really sweet. I'm definitely gonna. I'll see you at the at that Permanent Records Roadhouse too. That
Listen,
I
man. Let's
would love
and when
that.
I get out there, we'll do set two in person. But this was really a ball, man. I had a great time, and it's like I said, man, to meet someone your age, and I feel like you've already, as Herbie Hancock said, hang up your hang-ups, and so many people are distracted by the noise, and it takes away from who themselves, and um, you are. You're doing everything with grace. I mean, I consider myself a blind monk stumbling into grace. But at the end of the day, if the essence is there and the soul is there, like you said, it will cut through to the people who can feel it. So well, I'll see you real soon, man. We'll be in touch, man. It's going to be classic. Dude.
And thank you so much for having me and for everything. This has been such a joy. Really
Yeah,
nice
man.
to meet
Such a
you.
ball. We'll do
Yeah.
it again, man. All right.
Thank you so much.
Be cool.